Today we're going to talk about blood. Blood is a type of connective tissue that comes in 8 different types. Blood is the meal of choice of mosquitoes, the female ones, vampire bats, vampire finches, and I guess vampires if you believe in those. Blood is important to our health, and it's estimated that about 5 million people in the United States need a blood transfusion each year. We have a lot of synthetics in this world, but synthetic blood is something that we don't have yet, so it's really important that we use blood donations in order to help people who need them. If you've ever donated blood, it goes into a bag and then off to a lab where it's separated into different parts. And today we're going to look at some of those different parts of blood. So there's something called whole blood, which is what you donate when you donate blood. It's what you see when you prick your finger. But that whole blood is made up of 55% plasma and about 45% red blood cells, and then less than 1% of those white blood cells and platelets. Now that plasma, keep in mind, is 90% water. So when you've heard blood is mostly water, that's true. You might have heard that blood is thicker than water. That's also true. And that's because of the other ingredients in there is what makes it thicker than water. So that plasma, as I said, is 90% water, but it's also made up of a bunch of different other things like electrolytes, hormones, gases, proteins, and 100 different other things. So there's a lot of things in that little tiny 10% left over of the plasma. Now, your red blood cells, that's the heaviest part of your blood. That, of course, is what carries oxygen and carbon dioxide. So in your notes, of course, you should be writing red blood cells and carry oxygen and carbon dioxide. So carries oxygen and carbon dioxide. A new set is actually made every 2 months. So you're going to want to make sure you write that down because that's important. It also contains hemoglobin. And hemoglobin is that protein that carries oxygen throughout the body or throughout your cells. So all of these are really important things to note about your red blood cells. Now, your white blood cells, those are your infection fighters. So the white blood cells, they fight infection. So they defend your body against foreign microbes and toxins. And then that brings us to your platelets. Now these are just cell fragments, and they make up less than 1% of your blood, but that little part is actually very important to clotting. Let me clean that up for you. And again, that helps you with blood clotting. Blood clotting. So all of these parts of your blood are very important to perform different functions. And when we donate blood, sometimes the labs that separate out the blood will actually separate it into different parts so that they can help people in different ways. For example, somebody who might have a clotting problem might get a transfusion of just the platelets. And the blood plasma is used for a lot of different things. So the top half page of your note should look something like this. You can go ahead and pause the video now, or you can come back to it at the end in order to make sure you have all the important details written down in your notes. All right, let's go back to donating blood. When you donate blood, one thing that they often say is what they need often is blood type O, particularly O negative. You might not know exactly what that means, but you might know that each person has a blood type. Well, your blood type is a classification of a blood group. It is based on the presence or the absence of antibodies. So you have something called antigens, and those antigens, depending on which ones you have, will help fight off infection, foreign invaders. So it's important that you get a blood type that is a blood type donation that is compatible with your own. Those antigens are known as agglutinogens, and there are two types. There is A and B, and then you can either have type A, B, you can have both, or your blood can have neither of these molecules, meaning type O. Now, knowing a different blood type is important when blood is being donated or transfused, because if you have certain blood types, you're going to attack any foreign blood types. So if you have both markers, of course, you're type AB, you're known as universal recipient. However, if you are type O, you're known as universal donor. So let's get into more detail with that. Now, we've talked about the first set of antigens, A or B, AB or O, meaning you don't have that antigen, but there is also another set of antigens, just to complicate things, and that's your rhesus antigens, which is your RH antigens. That, of course, is if you have that antigen, you are positive, and if you don't have that antigen or have a lack of it, you are RH negative. Most people are RH positive, but a small percent of the population is RH negative. Now, what does it mean to have or don't have those antigens? That means that you can donate blood, but only receive blood from certain donors. So let's look at some differences. So if you don't have those antigens, your body will attack any of those antigens. Now, if you receive blood without those antigens, your body will not attack it because it doesn't have any foreign invaders. That's why some blood types can donate to many more, but some blood types can only receive limited donations. So let's get into detail. So universal donor is what we call O negative. That is here. Now we also have what's called universal recipient, which is AB positive. That means that if you are fortunate enough to be AB positive, you can receive any blood transfusion from anyone, assuming that the person is healthy. Now, I also wanted to note that we talk about 8 different blood types, but in actuality, there's actually over 35. But as far as blood donations go, there's only 8 that people really need to worry about. So AB positive can receive blood from O negative. They can receive blood from O positive. Again, these guys do not have those antigens. And then they have the RH positive antigen as well, if you are positive. Now, B negative, again, AB has both antigens, so it can receive blood from B, and B positive because it has that positive protein. Now we have A negative can receive A positive, AB negative, the rarest, and AB positive. Now, the frequency, of course, is how often that blood type comes up. So even though AB positive is actually the universal recipient, it's not a very common blood type. Only about 3%, 3.4 to be more precise, of the population is AB positive. So having both of those antigens is rare, but if you need a blood transfusion and you're AB positive, you're in luck because pretty much anybody can donate to you as long as they are healthy and able to give blood. Now let's look at AB negative, which is actually the rarest. So if you are AB negative, even though you can receive from many, blood drives want your blood because it is the rarest. And once you have a lot of blood necessary for a car accident victim or somebody like a cancer patient, it's important that you have various blood types. So AB negative can receive O negative blood. That blood type cannot receive O positive, but because again, that's that RH, that rhesus antigen that will attack. B negative, because it has both that A and B. It can receive A negative, AB negative. So the rarest blood type can actually receive some different donations if you are AB negative. Now let's look at A positive. Well, you can receive O negative blood. You can receive O positive blood. You cannot receive B or B negative, B positive or B negative blood, because that, of course, is a different antigen. You can receive A negative, and you can receive your own blood type, A positive. The people in the United States, that's about 35% of the population, is A positive blood type. It's one of the most common. I think it's the second most. Yeah. It's a little bit more of a dominant gene. So A negative, which happens to be my blood type, just for the record, means I don't have that RH protein. So I can only receive blood, someone with A negative, from O negative or my own blood type, A negative. And that's about 6.3% of the population that can receive the frequency. Now we have B positive, which can receive O negative or O positive, cannot receive A, but it can receive B negative or B positive. So that's about 8.5%. And then we have the B negative blood type, which is O negative or B negative. So again, you're a little bit more limited when you have that RH negative antigen. And that is about 1.5% of the frequency of the population. Then we have O positive. You might have seen blood drives say, we need O blood. That's because if you look at both of these scenarios, O blood can give to anybody. However, it can only receive blood from O. O negative, because it has that protein, or O positive, which is the positive antigen. So that's about 37% of the population actually has O positive blood. So even though it's a recessive gene, a lot of people actually have O positive blood in the population. That number might go down, but they always tell you at blood drives they need your blood. Now, O negative, you might see, we're getting a little bit more limited, is in every checkbox, including its own, but it can only receive O negative blood. If you have O negative blood, you're known as the universal donor. That means you can give blood to anyone. If you have O negative blood, blood drives will really appreciate your blood. And in most trauma wards, they always carry O negative blood, just in case there's a car accident victim that needs a really quick blood transfusion. They can give that person blood and be confident that person will not get sick from that blood transfusion itself. So this checkbox will help you. Let me show you it on another piece of paper. So you have this page in your notes, and you can use the check boxes. As I said, AB positive, of course, is the universal receiver, and O negative is the universal donor. So go ahead and take a minute to pause the video and make sure you have everything written down that's important. And then I'll show you the final page of notes in its entirety. So your page of notes should look something like this in your notebook. If you'd like, you can pause the video and compare it to your own and make any adjustments that you need to make. So in this lesson, you learned how antigens are responsible for your blood type, and it's important to know that you can take care of your blood and to know how blood donations work and to know how important your blood can be to other people, because it's estimated, again, that every 2 seconds in the United States, somebody needs a blood transfusion. So it's important that we're knowledgeable about the topic. Interesting fact, this picture was taken in front of the chapel of the Basilica of Holy Blood. Have a great day and make sure you're studying well. See you next time.